Let me tell you the moment everything snapped. I was standing in the middle of a crowded HOA meeting video footage of my daughter being locked in a basement playing on the projector, while Doreen Langford, the queen of Orchid Hollow, sat frozen, her power unraveling by the second. 30 minutes earlier, military vehicles had rolled up to her pristine lawn, but what buried her wasn't steel, it was truth. Let me paint you a picture. A soft Carolina breeze, a hydrangea bush blooming in full blue glory, and the kind of quiet that feels earned. That's what I thought we'd found when I moved into Orchid Hollow with my daughter Ivy. Just peace. After 25 years in the Air Force, I was ready to trade in sirens and protocols for weekend barbecues and flower beds. My name's Miles Thatcher. I'm 51, widowed, and these days I spend most of my time making sure my daughter Ivy has everything she needs. And Ivy, she's 17, sharp as a tack, laughs like she invented it, and moves through life in a wheelchair with the kind of confidence that puts most folks on their heels. She's got an artist's soul and a spine stronger than titanium, literally and figuratively. When she was 10, a car accident shattered her spine and our old life with it. But she came back swinging. When we moved into our new house, a modest colonial on the corner of Azalea Loop, she asked to plant a hydrangea bush in the front yard. "Healing needs roots, Dad," she said. So we did, right beneath the bay window. Watching that little green sprig grow into a flowering bush was a quiet victory. But quiet victories don't last long in Orchid Hollow. Not with Doreen Langford around. Picture a woman whose perfume announces her arrival a full 30 seconds before she rounds the corner. Late 50s hair lacquered into a helmet of blonde ambition, lips always curled into a tight smile like she's sucking lemons through a straw. Doreen is the HOA president, and according to her, the guardian of neighborhood beauty. Her rulebook is thicker than a Southern cookbook and twice as outdated. We'd barely finished unpacking when the first warning came, delivered on pale lavender stationery with a gold foil HOA seal. "Mr. Thatcher," it began, "your hydrangea is in violation of the visual symmetry clause outlined on page 42 of the Orchid Hollow Homeowner Covenant. Please remove or relocate the bush within 7 business days to avoid a fine." I read the letter 3 times. Then I looked at Ivy, who was sketching the hydrangea from the porch. "She wants it gone," I said. Ivy didn't even look up, so let her want. I didn't remove the hydrangea. That's when the real campaign began. First, it was a $75 fine. Ivy had parked her wheelchair on the driveway for 12 minutes while I fixed a flat on her back tire. Doreen appeared out of nowhere, clipboard in hand, snapping pictures like she was documenting a crime scene. "Driveways are for vehicles only. Mr. Thatcher," she chirped. "Unattended equipment is a safety violation." Equipment. That's what she called my daughter's chair. I paid the fine just to avoid the headache. The next week we got a notice about our garage door. Seafoam green. Not in line with the approved palette. Doreen sniffed, handing me a swatch card with shades so bland they looked like depression in color form. I told her it had been that color when we moved in. She didn't blink. "Still your responsibility to correct," she said. Ivy rolled up behind me. "You afraid color might cause a scandal?" Ms. Langford. Doreen's eye twitched. "We just want harmony," she said through clenched teeth. "Well," Ivy replied, "then you might want to start with your tone." I nearly choked, trying not to laugh. The last straw was the rose garden. There's a small park at the edge of the neighborhood, a peaceful spot with a fountain, some benches, and roses that bloom wild and tall. Ivy loved to sketch there, wheels crunching on the path as she studied the petals. One Tuesday, I got an email. Ivy was banned from the park. Reason: her wheelchair was causing premature turf erosion. Ivy read the email twice, then burst out laughing. "Dad, I weigh less than a golden retriever." But it wasn't funny. Not really. I saw the look in her eyes, the one she gets when she's pushing down hurt with humor. That night, I started keeping a file. Every fine, every notice, every friendly reminder. I even installed a camera facing our yard just in case Doreen got bolder. But Ivy, she stayed Ivy. She painted the hydrangea in every shade of blue. She joked that Doreen probably had a PhD in pettiness. But I knew she was tired. We both were. And the neighbors. They watched from behind their manicured hedges, eyes down, lips sealed. No one wanted to get involved. Doreen had been president for 8 years. She ran Orchid Hollow like a kingdom, and the residents were her loyal, terrified subjects. One guy, Walt, from 2 doors down, told me best to just keep your head down, Miles. She fined me once for my American flag being too faded. What did you do? I asked. He sighed. I bought a new one. That was the neighborhood. Silent compliance, wilting under lavender-scented tyranny. I tried to play it smart to stay calm to be better, but I could feel something building like a thunderstorm crouching just behind the clouds. And then came the potluck. That one night when everything changed. But that's not this chapter. No, this chapter is about a flower, a blue hydrangea, stubborn and proud, planted by a girl who refused to be pitied. This chapter is about the warning signs, the cracks forming under forced smiles and HOA regulations. And this chapter ends with a promise I made to myself: I would not let Doreen Langford uproot what we planted. Not without a fight. I didn't know yet just how dark it would get, or how much deeper the roots of this war would go. But I knew Ivy deserved better, and I was done being polite. I should have known something was wrong the moment I lost sight of Ivy. 1 second she was across the room at the HOA potluck, trading sketching tips with a couple of neighborhood kids over paper plates and potato salad, and the next gone. Now let me back up. This was the annual Orchid Hollow Mixer, hosted at the community clubhouse, a beige monstrosity that smelled like air freshener and aging ambition. Doreen Langford was in rare form, gliding through the crowd in lilac heels that matched her perfume, and a dress so stiff it probably stood up on its own. She'd greeted us at the door with that smile that never touched her eyes, praising Ivy's hair ribbons while handing me another copy of the HOA newsletter, as if I hadn't already received 3 that week. Ivy rolled in next to me, cool as ever, rocking a black hoodie she'd embroidered with hydrangeas across the sleeves. We weren't there to socialize. We were there to make a statement. After the fines, the insults, the garden ban, after everything Doreen had put us through, Ivy had insisted we show up anyway. If we don't, she said, it looks like we're hiding. And I'm not hiding from a woman who wears shoulder pads in 2025. So we showed up. We mingled. We smiled. Ivy drew a doodle of Doreen on a napkin with horns and a clipboard. We laughed. And then suddenly she was gone. At first I wasn't worried. Maybe she was outside getting air or catching up with those 2 girls who'd been admiring her sketchbook. But after 10 minutes passed and there was no sign of her, that old instinct kicked in, tight chest eyes scanning, mind racing. I asked around. The girls she'd been talking to hadn't seen her. No one had. I checked the bathrooms, the side patio, even the storage hallway behind the kitchen. Nothing. That's when I found Reggie. He was by the snack table loading up on deviled eggs like a man who'd seen combat, which, well, he had. Retired Navy SEAL, 60 years old, quiet, observant, and the only person in Orchid Hollow who didn't flinch around Doreen. Reggie, I said, my voice low. Ivy's missing. His expression changed instantly, calm to sharp in a heartbeat. When did you last see her? 15 minutes ago. Over by the drink table. He handed me his plate, wiped his hands, and nodded. Let's find her. We fanned out. I checked the front entrance again. He searched the outdoor seating area. Still nothing. Then, just as that panic was turning into something black and heavy, a tug on my sleeve. I looked down to see a kid, maybe 9 years old, standing there, with a face full of guilt and barbecue sauce. Mister, he said, I heard something weird. Ms. Doreen was talking to another lady and said she locked your daughter in the basement to teach you a lesson. Time stopped. I crouched down. Are you sure? He nodded, eyes wide. She said Ivy needed to learn who's in charge. I didn't wait. I turned on my heel and stormed toward the basement. Reggie must have seen my face because he fell into step beside me without a word. The door to the basement was a thick metal beast with a bolt that looked older than the building itself. I yanked. It didn't budge. Ivy, I shouted. Are you in there? A beat, then a muffled voice, small and shaky. Dad, I threw my weight into the door. Nothing. Reggie stepped forward. Move. He took a breath and shoulder-checked the bolt so hard the whole wall shook. On the 3rd try, it gave way with a scream of metal. I rushed in. The basement was damp and reeked of mildew. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Ivy sat near the corner in her chair, hugging her sketchbook, pale and shivering. Took you long enough, she whispered with a forced smile. I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms, heart pounding. I've got you, baby. I've got you. Doreen appeared at the top of the stairs like the final boss in a bad video game. Now let's not overreact, she said. It's just a misunderstanding. Reggie turned to her, his voice low and ice cold. You locked a disabled minor in a basement? Her smile cracked. I didn't mean save it, I snapped. You crossed the line. We got Ivy home and settled, but something in me had changed. I wasn't just angry, I was done. No more warnings, no more being polite. I wanted Doreen removed. Not just from office, from power. That night, Reggie came by with a plan. I've got contacts, he said, sipping from a travel mug that probably held something stronger than coffee. Some of my old unit is stationed nearby. They're doing a community engagement drill in the county next week. What if they took a little detour? I raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting military vehicles roll through Orchid Hollow not to hurt anyone. Just to remind Doreen she's not the only one who can flex power. Would that be legal? He grinned. Absolutely. They've got clearance for public road drills. We'll just give them a scenic route. Meanwhile, I worked my own angle. The clubhouse had cameras. It took a little convincing, but the janitor, Mr. Redmond, a gentleman with arthritis and a long memory, had also been fined for inadequate trash bin placement and was happy to help. He slipped me a thumb drive with the footage. There it was, grainy but clear. Doreen leading Ivy down the hallway, opening the basement door, smiling as she slid the bolt. My blood boiled all over again. I printed stills, backed up files, and started writing statements. Ivy, despite it all, insisted on helping. She doesn't get to make me afraid of my own neighborhood, she said. We're not going away quietly. Word spread faster than wildfire in a dry canyon. Reggie let a few key folks know what had happened. Then I sent a message in the Orchid Hollow group chat, normally reserved for dog poop complaints and lost Amazon packages. Last night, my daughter Ivy was locked in the clubhouse basement by HOA President Doreen Langford. We have video proof and a witness. An emergency HOA meeting is being requested. Details soon. The chat exploded. Messages poured in, some stunned, some furious, some with their own Doreen horror stories. Donna Reyes, the local librarian, messaged privately. She once fined me for planting lilies instead of tulips. I'll speak at the meeting. By the time the sun came up, Ivy was sketching again, this time a dragon coiled around a hydrangea bush. It's called poetic justice, she said. Let's make sure it lands. I looked at her bruised, tired, but unbreakable and nodded. Let's finish this. And that right there was the moment I stopped being just a neighbor and became a fighter. Doreen Langford had gone too far, and now the entire neighborhood was watching. The question wasn't whether she'd be held accountable. The question was how hard she'd fall. And trust me, we were just getting started. The rumble started low like a storm building beneath the pavement. I stood at the edge of Reggie Bellamy's driveway, Ivy's sketch clutched in one hand, and a USB drive loaded with footage in the other. My daughter was safe inside, curled up on the couch with a warm blanket and her sketchbook in her lap, but the fire in her eyes from the night before hadn't dimmed. Go slay the dragon, Dad, she'd whispered before I left. And outside, the cavalry was already on its way. Reggie's contacts had come through faster than I expected. Less than 12 hours after Doreen Langford locked my daughter in that basement and called it discipline, 3 tactical military vehicles rolled down Orchid Hollow Boulevard like they belonged there. Technically, they did. It was a legal public street, and technically, this was part of a public safety drill. But make no mistake, this was a show of force, a wake-up call for a woman who had treated the HOA charter like her personal rule book and my daughter's wheelchair like clutter. The lead vehicle was a matte black behemoth, all armor, in quiet menace. It turned the corner like a predator, stalking prey, followed by 2 more trucks carrying uniformed soldiers. Reggie stood beside me, arms crossed, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Nothing illegal, he murmured, but just intimidating enough to make her think twice about locking kids in basements. I looked toward Doreen's house, her grand white colonial with the absurd lion statues and fake wisteria vines. She stood on the lawn in her lavender-pumped cell phone glued to her ear, her voice rising like steam off hot pavement. This is harassment. Who approved this? I want badge numbers. I demand a cease order. One of the soldiers, a square-jawed sergeant built like a vending machine, stepped forward and spoke calmly. Ma'am, this is a scheduled Department of Defense drill for public awareness and emergency preparedness. We'll be stationed here briefly. Please maintain a safe distance from the vehicles. Doreen sputtered. Her heels clicked furiously on the brick driveway as she retreated to her porch, still yelling into the phone like someone who just discovered she wasn't the most powerful person in the room anymore. Meanwhile, the neighborhood came alive. Curtains parted, phones appeared, kids ran onto sidewalks pointing and laughing. Retirees in golf carts slowed to a crawl to get a better look. The word had already spread about what happened to Ivy. The basement, the lock, the brave little girl with sketches of dragons and a blue hydrangea. And now the neighborhood had a front row seat to the fallout. "You think she's sweating yet?" Reggie asked. I didn't answer. I was already walking toward the community center where the emergency HOA meeting was about to begin. The room was packed. Folding chairs lined the back wall. People stood along the sides. Even the neighbors who'd never shown up before, the ones who'd stayed silent through fines and flyers and flower bed violations, were here now, eyes sharp and voices low. I plugged the USB into the projector at the front of the room. Doreen stormed in 5 minutes later, flushed and fuming. She marched straight to the board table and sat like a queen clinging to a crumbling throne. "Let's get this over with," she snapped. "I have legal counsel on call." I stepped forward. "My name is Miles Thatcher. Last night, my daughter Ivy was lured into the community center basement by Doreen Langford and locked inside without supervision, communication, or consent. She uses a wheelchair. She was alone for over 30 minutes in a dark, damp room without access to a phone or emergency assistance. We have video proof." I hit play. The room went still. Grainy footage filled the screen. Doreen leading Ivy down the hall, opening the basement door, gesturing with a saccharine smile. Then Ivy rolled in, and the door slammed. The bolt slid. Gasps echoed around the room. One woman covered her mouth. A man in the back whispered, "That's a felony." Doreen rose to speak, voice shaking, but still clinging to authority. "This is being taken out of context. The door malfunctioned. I had no idea she was still down there." "I heard you laughing about it," said a small voice. Heads turned. Tyler, the 9-year-old boy who'd first spoken up, stood beside his mom, eyes wide but steady. "You said it would teach her a lesson." The room erupted. Voices clashed. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted, "She needs to be removed." Another, "She's done this to my son too." And then Donna Reyes, the quiet librarian with a spine made of steel, stepped forward holding a manila folder. "I have records," she said calmly. "Years of fines issued without proper notice. Homeowners punished for planting native flowers, painting doors slightly off color, or holding backyard gatherings without prior approval. Meanwhile, Doreen's friends, several of whom sit on this board, have had violations dismissed quietly. I have copies." She dropped the folder on the board table with a satisfying thud. Doreen's face went pale. Her eyes flicked to the board members beside her, 2 of whom were already inching away from her like rats off a sinking ship. "This is a coup," she hissed. "You're all turning on me based on a misunderstanding." Reggie rose from the front row. "Ma'am, with respect, you locked a kid in a basement. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime." I looked around the room. "We're calling for a vote, effective immediately. All in favor of removing Doreen Langford as president of the Orchid Hollow Homeowners Association, raise your hand." Hands shot up like fireworks, dozens of them, more than enough. Doreen stared in horror as the sea of arms rose, her authority crumbling with every second. "You'll regret this," she snapped. "I'll sue every last one of you." But no one was listening anymore. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the projector screen wobbled. A moment of silence hung in the air. Then someone clapped. Then another. And suddenly the room was cheering, not loud but resolute. Relief, justice, reclamation. That night, as the sun dipped low over Orchid Hollow and the soldiers drove off to their next stop, I walked Ivy outside. She wore her hoodie again, the hydrangeas on the sleeves almost glowing in the amber light. "Think it's over?" she asked. "For her, yeah," I said. "For us, just beginning." She pointed to the hydrangea bush in our front yard, her hydrangea. "Let's plant another," she said, "right beside it. A garden of 2. Doreen would hate that. Ivy grinned. "Exactly." The next morning we did it. Shovels in hand, gloves on. Neighbors came out to watch. Some brought plants of their own, a patch of lavender, a pot of marigolds. Even Tyler showed up with a tiny sunflower. The grass that once bowed to Doreen's tyranny now bloomed with life color and defiance. It wasn't just gardening. It was a quiet revolution, a message. That in Orchid Hollow beauty had roots deeper than control. That resilience could bloom anywhere, even where someone tried to bury it. If there's one lesson this story of Ivy and Miles teaches us, it's this: you don't have to be loud to be powerful, but you do have to stand up when something is wrong. Silence may keep the peace for a while, but in the face of injustice, silence is surrender. In neighborhoods across America, there are people just like Doreen, those who hide behind rules, titles, and power to control and intimidate others. And there are families like the Thatchers, who just want to live peacefully, to plant something beautiful and watch it grow. But when that peace is threatened, when dignity and safety are put on the line, even the quietest family can become a force to be reckoned with. Ivy's hydrangea wasn't just a plant, it was a symbol of resilience. And when that symbol was challenged, she didn't fight with anger. She fought with creativity, with community, and with courage. Miles didn't break the law or seek revenge. He stood firm, gathered the truth, and used the very structure that tried to crush them to bring about justice. And that, friends, is what real strength looks like. To every listener out there who's ever been made to feel small, whether by an overreaching HOA, a workplace bully, or someone in your life who thinks power means they can mistreat others, remember this: you are not powerless. Speak up, gather your people, keep your receipts. And if the system was built to silence, you use that same system to be heard. And maybe plant something right where they tried to dig you up. From us, Justice Stories, thank you for spending your time with us today. Your support, your comments, your stories, they mean the world. If this episode made you think, made you smile, or made you clench your fists in righteous anger, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got more real-life tales coming that'll remind you just how powerful everyday people can be when they stand up together. And hey, if you've ever had a Dorian in your life, drop your story in the comments below. We're not just telling stories, we're building a community of folks who believe in fairness, dignity, and fighting back the right way. Until next time, stay rooted, stay brave, and never underestimate the power of one planted seed.